Elizabeth is recording now. Okay, beautiful. So it is my absolute delight to introduce Celia Reissig. She is a writer. Huh?
I was just saying hello.
Oh, hello. There she is. And if you go up to viewer screen, you can get her right on the screen. That might be, or if you want to keep the gallery open, whichever is your preference. There she is. Hi, Celia. She is a writer and an educator. She immigrated with her family to the United States from Argentina when she was a little girl. Through her writing, she explores the challenges of immigration and the role of mindfulness and gratitude as she navigates and contemplates diverse life journeys. Her most recent publications include Reflections, Where Oblivion Shall Not Dwell in Home, An Imagined Landscape, Huellas, did I say that correctly? Or Traces is her most recent, I believe, but she'll talk to us about that. She is professor of English at Mercy College, where she has taught for over 27 years in the School of Liberal Arts Department of Literature and Language. It is just a delight to have you come and speak to us. Thank you, Celia. Thank you.
I am so thrilled to be here. Thank you, Jay. Thank you, everybody, for inviting me. Life journeys are always an adventure, a path to understanding, no matter what form they take. And in that journey, in that process, we can come to make essential discoveries. So I would like to talk to you today about mind through the medium of poetry. My life journey, like so many others, has included loss and grief, change and challenges, in whatever form they might present themselves. I learned this at a young age when my parents made the decision that we had to leave Argentina in order to forge a new life away from dictatorships and repression. My father told my siblings and I that in a month we would be leaving our country, our family, our friends, and moving to the United States, to Long Island in the state of New York. I was so afraid and already imagining the fear and loneliness of living in a new country where we knew no one and no one knew us. That night I had a dream that found its way to the surface and became a poem where that fear found a voice and thus became a manageable emotion that I could calm and soothe because I had given it life. In the dream, waves lap upon the shores of a strange island in a faraway land. The island is narrow, so narrow that the waves overwhelm it and it disappears. For a moment, awash in salt-soaked brine, then it gasps, gulping for breath, only to disappear again. In the distance, a lonely child clings upon a rock, her gaze locked on a distant horizon. When we finally made it to Long Island, I soon learned that this island was actually very large and would not easily be submerged by the ocean. I also learned that besides the many bullies that beat us and cursed at us because we were not like them, we came from a strange country that they had never heard of. We didn't speak English, and we had customs that looked nothing like theirs. There were people who accepted us and welcomed us. The Unitarian Universalist Fellowship in Huntington, Long Island, where my family and I spent the first few years in our new country. I learned about gratitude, and I came to find healing in the embrace of this congregation. The UU was my portal into the spiritual journeys that I would embark on and would eventually find their voice in the many poems I would come to write. Poetry is a portal to mindfulness. It invites, beckons, urges us to dwell, to really see rather than watch, listen rather than hear, what is outside us and inside us. Mindfulness connects us to the internal and external, humanity, nature, universe, God. Have you seen? Have you seen eagles on cold spring, winter mornings? They slice through frozen air suspended. The highlands etched in autumn light on 9D, trees ablaze in oranges and yellows. The waters of the Hudson, ebony, black, glistening. Fishkill Creek by the roundhouse, eyes stars cling on waterfalls. Garden Street. Garden Street by the river, dream catchers and daddy longlegs. The creek in the back has sung to me. Leaving the contours of this house, its wood and tapestries, its rickety stairs. C chords on acoustic guitars, humming on hushed snow-covered streets. Morning suns streaming through the window, and moons full and crescent, lighting night skies. Owls and crickets. Wet snails leaving silky trails on concrete slabs. All this and more I leave behind. Rural time. Lush green after summer rains, dense as ant swarms, thick as the spider's web gone undisturbed for years under the house. Rural time hums, insects swirl at dusk. I am still learning its rhythms. My father's awkward steps as I teach him to dance. Dusk descends, suspenders gracing thin shoulders, his shirt soaked in sweat. One step forward, 2 steps back, Dad. Let go of my right hand and twirl me around. Let go of my left hand and I'll twirl you this way and that. I tuck this memory, knowing each day with him is a gift unopened and sacred. Where will he go when he leaves? Will the universe reclaim him? So poetry continued being a haven in its form as a portal to my subconscious where so many unresolved issues and conflicts dwell. Dwelling, mindfulness heals. Years after having immigrated to the United States, I wrote the following poem about what different paths to healing might look like. It is about the immigrant experience seen through the eyes of an adolescent girl, me at 17. So before I read this poem, I want to tell you that for me, capturing or rejourneying the immigrant experience so many years in the making, has led me to not just use English as a poetic language, but also Spanish. So you'll hear some parts in Spanish, which you might not understand, but that's okay. It will immerse you in the immigrant experience. Imagine, for example, if you were to immigrate to Germany or to France or somewhere else, and you don't speak the language, the first few years especially will be so hard. So I have retained the language, my language of origin in many of my poems, what I call my Spanglish poems. Blues in C minor. For so many years, I could play the charade. All I had to do was remake myself. I had to become Celia instead of Celia and be able to say 3 instead of tree. I had to tell the kids on the block that my mother was a housewife and not an artist. And God forbid, I couldn't tell them that I was from somewhere south of the border You know those wild places where wetbacks breed. Traded long hair parted on the side for shoulder length and layered. Traded cotton for nylon and polyester. Traded passion for books and intense talks for television and the mute stare of keg parties. I would have done just about anything to feel real in this world where I didn't belong, but the lyrics just didn't speak to me. The three of us, we each rebelled in our own way. I sought the refuge of my soul, found my own percussion on rhythm and rhythm, born of pampas, Martha Graham, tangos, John Baez, asados, 59 Mustangs, El Tigre, Beethoven's Ninth with bow and resin, Palermo and Cachao, bike riding with Tara, Mercedes Sosa, Mrs. Carey first position plie, mates y sobremesas en noches porteñas, Allman Brothers, cafecitos y vinachos. You went back to where we left, to almacenes y boliches, to the dusty roads of our past, lingering hesitantly on distant shores. El Río de la Plata y La Boca beckoned you home. You went to Brooklyn, where the Sabbath starts at sundown, and the quena and charango linger softly on the lampshades. White linen starched on the clothesline above the Navy Yard. It always leaves a gray film. No amount of washing will take it out. But we've run out of songs, LPs, cassettes, CDs. None of them work now. Even the lyrics we've rewritten, the ones we carved out of stone to reclaim ourselves, the ones that bring us back to cuando comíamos helados con la abuela Julia y te acordás cuando te llevaste el dinero de Delia y compraste alfajores para todos. Y María Elena Walsh cuando nos cantaba de la vaca y Manuelita. None of them work now. I wear my hair long parted on the side. I love cotton, passionate about books and intense talks. I'm Celia. I don't correct Mom when she says it's 3 o'clock, but none of them work now. For the deepest of griefs knocks at our doors. I will reach into the deepest corners of the night. I will not leave without our songs to mark the passings of our lives. So I'm going to pause here for a moment because I've done a lot of poems there. So maybe, and I haven't seen Jay signal to me, but I see that I'm actually a little past my time for reading. So maybe you would like to ask questions or ponder. I'm not sure how to word this, Jay, but I guess it's the Q&A.
You were wording it just perfectly, and we still have a little more time. I think we can open it up at this point for more reflections. What you shared with us about.
I could do one more poem if you would like, or we can share and then. Okay,
how about
so I'll do one more poem.
One more poem and a reflection about where that was when you wrote that, or your reflections on that too, I think would be very helpful.
Okay, wonderful. So this next poem, I'll give you a little story to it. So I was living in Westchester County in the 1990s in a very diverse community. Perhaps some of you have heard of Portchester. Where as an adult, I came to live with my husband and our 2 children. And basically our children were raised there. So I was very active in the community, and it's a very diverse community, and there was conflict among the different racial and ethnic groups, growing racism and hate crimes. So a group of us got together. We had started a bookstore together, and we created the annual Multicultural Arts Festival as a way to bring the community together. We did this for 10 years. It was an incredible experience, and I think we really made at least some kind of impact. Visual artists, musicians, dancers, writers, and I was in charge of the traveling poets, both Latino poets and Anglo poets. And would walk around the streets reading our poetry out loud. And there I met my artistic and spiritual muse, Brenda Connor Bay, who died 5 years ago of cancer. I wrote this poem inspired by her life, and I think it really captures what poetry can do, where it can take you, what it can invite back and urge us to learn about ourselves, about the universe. Oh yeah, she said through pursed lips, the sunshine playing hopscotch on her hair. I touched her pulse. Oh, she was so alive. Like swollen rivers, blood pulsed through her veins. I felt her heat through her skin. Her words led me through such places, edgy, sharp, staccato. I journeyed to the heart of Africa, to the Honduran jungles, to the jagged mountains of the Bolivian highlands. I danced with her on the savannah plain. We drank deep of the oasis' sacred waters. I felt the sting of salt waters on my skin, tracing rivers on my belly. I danced to the beat of some inner drum, beckoning me to really feel the earth with my feet, to know that I can grow roots so deep for the whisperings of goddesses hum. Well, thank you. Thank you. So I can open it up, or actually I can close with one last poem, which really directly speaks to spiritual journeys and the spiritual experience. But I'll let our MC, Jay, make that decision.
I think we have time for one more poem, and then we'll open it up for some dialogue, and we'll be in good time. Good time.
Wonderful. So this poem is called The First Brain. There is a wild place, a first brain of rhythms and patterns that swells and beckons. It is a web of contradictions if we do not know its language. It is a Tower of Babel, a place of intimate knowledge, the junction between pure reason and naked emotion. It is the animal in us that we deny. It is the energy that unites us to the universe of beings. It is our first breath and our last. It is the wave that crashes upon the shore, the outspread wings of flight, the budding branch that opens to the light, the seed that searches for its source, the roots that dig into warm earth. It is the ocean floor and the scraping of the husk. It is the clouds whose wombs are heavy, that rain that falls on parched ground. It is a place where skin becomes an empty shell, where we shed our arrogance like flowers shed their wings. Thank you all. Looking forward to our conversation.
Oh, Celia, that was just lovely. Thank you. Thank you.
My pleasure. A joy to share.
Yeah, a joy to receive. A joy to receive. We have about 7 minutes. If people would like to share or comment or ask Celia questions, I see Hollis raising his hand. Yeah.
Oh, that was wonderful. I've written in my life about 200 poems. Maybe someday I'll inflict some of them on the world, but I love it. Poetry is an art form that is the easiest thing of all the arts to start or to propose you're going to do, but it's one of the hardest art forms to produce something of value, and you certainly have. And I just want to say in conclusion, we used to years ago have a poetry day, and we would get a fine poet and other people would come in with their poems and they'd stand up in our space and read them. I would love to do that again. And I hope you can participate in it. Thank you. Thank you so much.
I would love that, Hollis. Thank you.
Thank you. Linda. Hi, Linda.
Thank you so much for sharing with us today and for your story. I love that you incorporated that. And my first thought was, how did your family, as not so much English speaking immigrants, connect with the UU in Huntington? Did they have some kind of an outreach program, or did you meet somebody, or could you just say a few words about that?
My dad and I were going for a walk, and and we saw this beautiful looking building. We went inside. We had no idea what it was about. And now my dad, his English of the 5 of us in the family was the best. I mean, we actually, he was a professor of genetics and microbiology at Long Island University. And so that's how we were first able to leave the United States. Otherwise, Argentina, otherwise we would have had to have had a very, very difficult journey. And I was starting to learn English in school, even though when I came to the United States, all I knew how to say was yes, no, and water, please. But I have a knack for languages. I speak 4 languages fluently currently. And yeah, my English was not perfect. My dad's, of course, was much better. My brother and sisters and my mother's was virtually non-existent. So we were the portals to American society. I'm the one that went to the parent-teacher conferences instead of my mother because she didn't speak English. So I was basically like a second mom to my younger siblings. And but it was a wonderful way actually to learn English because at the UU in Huntington, because it was very spontaneous, it was very real, because otherwise the only English that we were exposed to was in school, because at home we spoke Spanish. And, you know, school English is school English. It won't get you far in terms of making friends and engaging with other communities. I don't know if I answered your question, if I can dig a little deeper, but that was basically how it was.
It was a nice building.
It was a nice building. You walk in and were welcomed. That's
exactly lovely. Lovely.
It was amazing. Yeah.
Anyone else? Questions, reflections as you listen?
Did you have did you have any Argentinian connections in the poetry or the among writers? The only Argentinian writer I can think of offhand is Borges. Do you have friends? Do you communicate with your country of origin at all?
Yes, yes, of course. A lot of my family is still there. Actually, my brother did the reverse immigration and went back to Argentina. So it was really tough. I mean, we were the victims of bullying to a degree that you cannot imagine. Really scarred us in many ways. And we were living in a middle-class neighborhood, you know, in a New York suburb. And there weren't many Argentinians, but back home, you know, I travel back home with my family, on my own as I got older. So there is definitely, you know, still a very strong connection. My last book of poetry, Huellas, Traces, was actually published in Argentina. And I've had 2 books that have been published in Argentina, books of poetry and plays. So I have a very strong connection. And in our home in Argentina, and even when we moved to the United States, we've always been surrounded by artists, by writers. My mother is a painter and a sculptor. Oh. And yeah, and actually Borges used to come to our house, Mike.
Really?
Yes, back in the day. Oh my God. So yeah, my grandfather, Luis Reissig, started a parallel university called El Colegio Libre de Estudios Superiores, which was in response to the Peronist dictatorship. Yes. And because if you weren't in the Peronist party, you weren't employed. So many professors had to leave, and they went to my grandfather's school. And so Borges, his first public reading was in my grandfather's school. So I'm going to tell you guys this little story, which I think you'd like. Please. So Borges comes a few hours before he has to give his talk. He knocks on my grandfather's door and says, "I'm very nervous, Luis. What can you do to help me?" And he says, "Give me a moment." And he opens up a drawer in his desk and he pours him a shot of whiskey. Yes. And he says, "You'll be fine." And the truth was that whiskey was miraculous, even though Borges was old. Throughout his life, he was a very kind of shy and strange little man, but a wonderful, incredible human being. Yeah.
Thank you. That's a wonderful story.
Beautiful story. Yeah. And I think you've also spoken at the very beginning of today, Patrick brought up about the slurs that were written. I did not see them, but that were written. And you speak to, you know, how difficult, you know, that being other, being someone viewed as other and different, the scarring that does inflict.
I'm just a little confused. Were you bullied in Argentina, or were you
No, in the United States?
In the United
States. Yes. Yeah, because there's, I don't know, you know, the other, those that are different, seem to frighten people. And so they lash out. They can lash out violently.
Yes. My mother used to say there are people here who could look through a keyhole with both eyes.
And, you know, why get involved in other people's business? It's really, it was such an horrific experience for me, my brother and sister. And we were in school, you know, the children, our classmates accepted us, even people that were of different socioeconomic classes, races, etc. There was not that bullying going on in Argentina that seems to be such an ingrained part of American society, at least in my very own personal experience.
Beautiful, yes. We have time for one more person, and then we're going to have our closing piece that Celia suggested. Jim Tarvin?
Yes, you mentioned poetry as a portal to my unconsciousness. Does something sort of bubble up from your unconscious that kind of gets you starting to write a particular poem? Is that like your muse is coming from that source? How does it start?
Yes, so I also write in other genres, but poetry is kind of a different creature. There's no pre-planning. I never know when something will bubble to the surface, when a poem will come through me. I seem to be the medium. I don't seem to have a very active role in the actual writing of it. I don't know what language it'll come out in. I don't know what it'll be about. And I always have a little notebook wherever I go. I mean, they're scattered all over the house. I've been known to write on my hand. Back in the day, because I started writing when I was very young, I would write on the wall, much to my mother's dismay. And so, I think, Jim, that it might be kind of the unconscious bubbling up. I started off the reading today with a poem about what I thought Long Island was like. And that poem emerged from a dream. It was actually a nightmare that I had for like a month or so before we actually left. So there I can say that definitely through my unconscious via my dreams.
Thank you, Celia.
Thank all of you. Thank you.
Yeah, everyone. Listening and speaking. Portal to the heart also, right? Portal from the heart. Celia, do you want to introduce this last piece that we're going to play? Okay.
Okay. So one of Argentina's most important musicians, artists, singers is Mercedes Sosa, who died, I want to say maybe 7-8 years ago. Have any of you heard of Mercedes Sosa? So I love her voice. You have Mike. So I love her voice, and also to me, the lyrics of her songs are pure poetry. And Mercedes Sosa, I've been listening to her ever since I was little, and has accompanied me throughout all my journeys of life. And I thought it would be so appropriate to share with you a song about gratitude, and and a song that has helped me to remember to be thankful even for the smallest, most seemingly insignificant things about life.
Beautiful.
And so I send Jay the link that you'll hear Mercedes Sosa sing, but you'll also see the lyrics projected on the screen in English.